Time to cancel the Cabal, with Stephen Roberts. On MSI Radio.
Alright, and welcome everybody. That's my cue. Red or blue. The signification of the red or blue pill in the Matrix movies. Today on Revolution Radio's Cancel the Cabal, I have a very special guest. I guess I should say this is Stephen Roberts. Welcome everybody. I'm bringing a little bit of a bio up here. My special guest today is Maralee Mclean. She's an author. She's also a mother. And her book is Prosecuted but Not Silenced, Courtroom Reform, Why We Need Education in Our Families' Courts for Sexually Abused Children. I believe it was also made into a documentary about one mother's, is a powerful documentary. I guess that's just the book, the description of it, of one mother and daughter's tragic involvement with the judicial and legal system when there are allegations of child sexual abuse. So, welcome to the show, Maralee.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I have lots to say, so you just let me know where you'd like to start.
Well, let's go ahead and start it now. Let's start from the beginning.
Okay. I am a mom that was a protective parent. I was divorced. However, in most of these cases, there's like a custody issue going on. They made my case into a custody issue, but I had full custody of my daughter. She was about 2.5. I'd already been in the court through the divorce process, and when she was 2.5, she told me, some things that her dad was doing to her that I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. And that you have to imagine this was over 25 years ago. So at that time, you didn't hear about sexual abuse and you didn't hear much of anything like that. And I was pretty much removed from it, from my kind of background. Very happy home life, being raised in a very secure environment. So you just didn't hear about it on the news like you do today. Like you hear it every day now. But my sister was a nurse, and I called her and told her what my daughter was saying, and she said, just listen to her and don't mention her father's name, because she was saying it was her dad doing this to her, and just see if she repeats the same thing in the morning when she wakes up. Just ask her what happened, and that's what she did. She repeated the same thing. I ended up taking her to her doctor, and I had talked to my therapist about it, and they said, "Oh, absolutely, and you have to notify someone. You can't be illegal for me not to." So it's a catch-22 for women that bring this forward. The minute this came forward, and the police got involved, and social services was the biggest. What do I want to say? It really caused the most problems in this, starting out from the beginning, and back then and even today, I don't want to say lack of education, but I say common sense, lack of education, whatever it may be. These people are not protecting our children. And at that point, my daughter was in therapy. More of the abuse came out, more detailed stuff as time went on, with the daycare provider saying what was happening to her. She had been in a playhouse at one point and bent over a table and told a little boy to stick it here. So that's behavioral. And at that point, the GAL that was brought into the case, a guardian ad litem, which I didn't even know what a guardian ad litem was back then, and he was getting supervised visits at social services, and she said that's just, just ignored anything that was happening. And at one point, I went to a session at social services, and they said to me, they wanted to discuss parental alienation and mediation and something else, like 4 terms that I had to agree to or whatever with them. And I hadn't even hired an attorney or anything, because I just figured, people would do it right. She was very articulate at a young age, and she knew her ABCs before she was even 2. She was just very, very advanced and vocal about what was happening, verbal. And so I figured, well, they'll just do what's right. How could you possibly ignore what this child is saying? And I went in for a visit one day for him to see her, and then they said they wanted to discuss things with me, and that was with the guardian ad litem that was just assigned to the case, which I knew nothing about. I hadn't even hired an attorney. She met me very abruptly and said, we need to discuss these things. And I thought, I could handle these people, and that, I know what's right, and I wasn't worried, but I knew that, they were really going to investigate me at that point. And I went in, and they chastised me for a good hour and a half, 2 hours. And not one question was directed towards the father, but all towards me. And why would your daughter continue to say this if you weren't coaching her? And then I said, well, would you like to hear what she's saying? And I said it right in front of the father. And then they said that this is parental alienation. And I didn't know what that term meant, which I know women do today, because you guys have the computer and you can get on the internet and you find out lots of information. But back then we didn't have that. And so parental alienation, I said, gosh, I've been over backwards for this child to be in his life. I said, I had a great relationship with my own father, and I want her to have a chance to have the same. And then anyway, all the terms they came down with, and if I didn't agree to going into mediation and sitting and talking with him about the abuse, we've been divorced for 2 years. Why would I want to go in and sit down and discuss what's happening to her in front of him and discuss insurance? Stupid stuff, nothing to do with what was happening. And he was very abusive to me. And so in most of these cases, there's domestic violence first, and then it moves into abusing the children. Let's see, I'm trying to get it. So anyway, that day they took my daughter away from me. They had a plan before I walked in that morning. Now I have a wonderful home. I'm an excellent mother, and all these mothers are. There are moms, I'm not going to say, that have done things that are horrible, but in these cases, these are protective moms. I have met hundreds, and they're good mothers. They're excellent mothers, and they can't protect their kids.
Absolutely.
So anyway, they ended up putting her in foster care that day. I walked into another room, and I laid my head down on a desk, and I was crying as if I had died. But I knew to hold together somewhat, because I'd never see her again. I didn't know what was coming down. And so I got up. They said, you can go say goodbye to your daughter now. And I can remember walking down this hallway, and it was like a gray mist. My legs were shaking. I know I was in shock. And they go, one of the social workers said, look at her. She can't handle it. She can't say goodbye to her daughter. I can still cry to this day remembering that moment. And I just kind of put my hand out the side, and I knew. And I said, yes, I can, because I didn't want her to think that I just left her and abandoned her. She's 2.5 years old. And I go in, and we were planning on roller skating that day, and she said, Mommy, are we going skating? What's wrong? And I said, no, honey, Mommy will see you soon. And they had the police escort me out. I'd done nothing. He didn't even live with me. You take the child out of the protective parent's home and put her in foster care and totally traumatize her when she has a healthy, wonderful home life? Now, I wonder about that now, because I hear that when social services puts children in foster care, they get a lot of money nowadays, and back then too. There's a federally funding money that goes into that. So there's a lot of money behind all this stuff. And anyway, I'm going to kind of move forward. Stephen, the bottom line is my daughter was being abused. The abuse continued. I was in court for 3.5 years at that point, trying to protect her. The more I fought the system, the more time she got with her father. The more I, fought with everything I had. I pretty much lost everything I owned. Like most of these mothers, they end up out on the streets, a lot of them. And if they're a stay-at-home mom, they don't have a chance. I at least had a career. So anyway,
what did you do,
very difficult. Well, I was in-flight supervisor. Before I had my daughter, I was a flight attendant for like quite a few years, maybe 18, 20 years. And then I went into management because I didn't want to fly while I had her. And then once this progressed to where it was going, where I couldn't do anything, they were giving him more and more time, I went back to flying to free up my time. So I would fly from where I lived in Denver to Washington, D.C. to lobby, and I worked with a law firm out there called Berner, McPherson and Hand. It was a big law firm that was setting up appointments on the Hill for me to lobby, and then I would come back to the law firm, put my uniform on, and work the trip back. So I did that back to back. So when he had her, I was lobbying, and I never stopped. It was 24/7. And there was nothing I could do. It's like set in stone. These people get in their minds. They use the parental alienation syndrome by Dr. Richard Gardner. And Dr. Richard Gardner in the 80s started the parental alienation syndrome. And this guy it's junk science, and it's not approved by the American Board Association and this Doctors Medical Board or the Psychological Association. And he took his book, self-published it, and sent it to every court in the nation. And he testified, and it's $500 an hour or whatever, huge amounts of money. He made a lot of money. There's a lot of money making for him. But in his books, he states that we all have some pedophilia within us, and we need to have more pity for the pedophile than scorn. That it's okay for the pedophile to come out of the closet and choose whom they want to love because it's God's will. That it's better for procreation. It makes little boys and little girls better sexual partners, and when they become adults. He says that the Eastern cultures accepted this for centuries, and we're just way behind times here. In other words, they need to accept pedophilia. Not one word is mentioned what this does to the child. And all these courts took on his theories in the 80s, and so all these mothers were losing custody. And anyway, by the time my daughter was 4.5, about 4.5, I had to go through an evaluation with two evaluators, that quoted Gardner and Underwager and Wakefield, who are another pedophile. Pretty much, if you read the Padica brief, it will tell you how they promote pedophilia. They just don't think there's anything wrong with it.
What's this doctor's name again, Maralee?
Go ahead.
What's this doctor's name again? This doctor that...
There's Dr. Richard Gardner is the one that started the parental alienation syndrome, with it's all junk science. Underwager and Wakefield are two other doctors that came into this, that they wrote. If you read the Padica brief, they try to hide it, but in the Padica brief, it's Paidika, I think, it states what their belief system is. And Underwager and Wakefield and Gardner were all a part of this thing. There's others out there too, but it's horrific. It's a nightmare. But anyway, so people took on their theories, and I got caught up in the parental alienation, which they call PAS labeling. I got caught up in that, and I could not get out. And it didn't matter how much information came out. By the time my daughter was 4.5, she had 3 police reports, 3 doctors' reports stating abuse. The top doctors in the state of Colorado from the Child Advocacy and Protection Team wrote a letter to my judge considering sexual abuse of my child, and to please contact them before he made a ruling in the case. I had 7 judges, and I could not get anybody to look at the child at the safety of my child. Not one of them ever looked at the safety of my child. These cases, I get thousands of calls. I have mothers call me from every state and worldwide. I have them call me from Ireland, England, Scotland, Germany, and what was the other one? I don't know, several. It doesn't matter. It's Australia. And it's like, it's rampant, and nobody wants to take a look at it. Nobody wants to do anything. They belong in criminal court. If you abuse a woman, say, or domestic violence doesn't seem to matter, but if you raped a woman, it goes to criminal court, doesn't it? Why doesn't this go to criminal court? Why does it belong in family court where they can't deal with it? That the judges rubber stamp what social workers say. Social workers do what they do because they're told to do what they do. I don't know the real dynamics there. I know there's a lot of money behind it. There's been a lot of research done. We have, here in Denver, we had an article that they covered in the Denver Post. It was called Failed to Death, where the system's failing these children to death. And it also did, and then the 9 News carried it also because we had so many thousands of kids that are dying under the system. And what's amazing to me is failed to death, yes. But you think that when you allow a child to be re-victimized over and over and force them to go live with their abuser, what kind of damage do you think you're doing? Is that not a failed to death of that child? Because that takes everything out of that child, who that child would have been, could have been, whatever is going to happen. We don't even look at the fact that 90% of our people that are in prison today have been abused as children. When a father wants custody, 70% of the time they will get custody. Most fathers don't want custody, but when they do, 70% of the time they will get custody. They always say, oh, moms always get custody. Are you kidding me? I watch these women. When I first went through this, I thought I was the only one going through it because I didn't have the internet like these moms do. I didn't have the connections. Nobody talked about sexual abuse. So I really was isolated. But I networked until I found women that were going through this in other states. And I ended up testifying before Congress when my daughter was 5, and with 10 other mothers from across the nation. And these women could have been me speaking just like they are today. They could have been my story over and over again. I was totally shocked when they stood up to speak. Now, these are educated women. They're from every walk of life. One was an attorney, one's a doctor. The rest were from every walk of life, and we're all standing there telling the same story, and nobody's listened. This is 25 years later, or maybe 20, because she was 5 at the time. But 20 years later, and nobody's listening. What is wrong with our society?
Yes, I know.
When I talk about I know, Stephen. I mean, I could go on and on, I know. But I think that, the billions of dollars that are being spent, and if taxpayers realize the damage this is doing to our society and the monies that are going into this, everybody's upset with Obamacare and this and that. This is affecting their lives. Huge, and it's affecting their children's lives, and it's not just happening to me and the woman next door.
It's affecting all families.
Huge problem. Yeah, yes, exactly. So that's, there's much more I can discuss. You can lead me. I gave you a huge load there, so wherever you want to take this, that's fine by me. I'm ready.
Okay, I hope you're not all done because we still have a long time to go.
Oh, no, I'm not done.
All right.
I'm not done. I have lots to say about what's going on out there, like the movie Divorce Court that's out, and you've got a lot of fathers' rights on big on this. And what's really sad, I believe that Divorce Court movie does say a lot of pertinent things that happen in divorces and the money, the billion-dollar industry, and that kind of thing. But it's leaving out a crucial part to all this. And the crucial part is that, women and children are being abused by the system, and they're awarding custody to the abusers. I mean, this is huge. Now, we want to give joint custody to these people that are abusing children. I mean, I'm not saying there are good fathers out there, lots of them, lots and lots of them. But the ones that are not, should they get custody of these beautiful children and destroy them? And these women, what it does for my life. An example. I mean, I ended up losing everything I owned. I sold my furniture, my house, my car, everything. I went through any monies I ever had. You go through every single thing you have. And then that's not the least of it. At that point, when I wouldn't stop fighting the system, I'm somebody that's maybe more vocal than most mothers in a different way, as you can tell by the way I speak now. I got out and fought. When I knew I was losing her, and I lost her, when I lost her in ex parte hearing, which is they did an emergency hearing over the phone without me present, and I'm in Washington, D.C., and over the phone, they take my daughter away from me. I called to talk to the Kim Center, which is a National Sexual Abuse Center here in Colorado, because I was trying to get them involved to help my case. And I've been meeting with a woman there a lot, and so she was trying to get this out there. And I ended up speaking with her, and I called her on the phone that day, and she said, Maralee, I called my attorneys, and my attorney said, Maralee, the judge is on the phone right now with your case. We can't talk to you. And so I'm like, oh, my God, what do you mean? And they go, well, the judge is on the phone. We're taking the child away. I said, they can't do that. You tell them I'm not present. They can't take her away from me on the phone. What is going on? And I said, tell my attorney not to take that phone call. Well, we have to take that phone call as the judge. So anyway, I knew that moment that was done. I remember getting on the plane, and I had to work that flight home. I still cried. I went into the lavatory, and I stayed in there even on takeoff, and I roared like a lion, because when those engines roared, I roared. And when I got home, I just called a bunch of my friends that knew what was going on to support me, and I got home, and I called my attorney, and I waited till I got home, till I drove home, and yes, you lost her. And 80-page court order, 80-page evaluation by those two therapists after 3.5 years of fighting, with the daycare provider saying she's being abused, police reports, doctor's reports. She had physical evidence at the age of 4, lacerations and abrasions, inside, detailed stuff. And I still lost her. And those two therapists never put one thing in there about there was probably 25 witnesses. There's police reports, and not one thing. What they put in there was they quoted Gardner, and they quoted Underwater and Wakefield in my court order. All that's in there. So I'm really glad I have all that. So anyway, because it proves what goes on in the system and what they're doing, I lost her to supervised visits 1 hour a week. That 1 hour a week was all I had with her, and I urge other mothers out there. I know it's the most painful, horrific thing you can go through, to watch your child suffer and go in for a 1 hour visit and not be able to talk about anything. Everything you say is curtailed. It's worse than if you were, it was worse than being in prison. Your hardened criminals have more rights to their children than I did, and that these mothers do. So you go in and you have this 1 hour visit, and you're trying to keep that child as normal as you can, and it's absolutely horrendous. And then they say, that went on for years. I had 8 years of supervised visits. I don't want to scare these other mothers out there, but I did. And most moms don't make it through it, because it's just, they go to bed. They don't make it. That's all I can tell you. Through my time period, I watched moms go in the underground. I watched them die, commit suicide. One mom that was an attorney from New York saw no avenue to protecting her 5-year-old daughter, and took her into the garage and asphyxiated them in the car. And I'm not saying that's an avenue, and I'm not saying that anything. I'm just saying desperate measures are being taken. And I just can't get over it. I'll think about Sandusky case and how everybody's up in arms, and it's horrific what Sandusky did, and anybody that abuses a child. But try it with the own father, and the damage that is when it was an intimate, somebody that child trusts like that, just like they did Sandusky. But they have to live with that person. They're forced to live. And then it's not like, as a mother, you have the police fighting to look for that child, or that you have the DA filing criminal charges, or everybody up in arms doing vigilante, candlelights, getting your child home. You are done. You have no help, you have no support, and you're treated as if you are a horrific mother. And you're an excellent mother. You've done nothing wrong, but what you're told to do within the law is to report it. And this is where you go. This is what you get. You lose everything you own, and you lose the very child that you were trying to protect. Your lifeline. She's your life, or he is. And I watch it every day. When a mom calls me, I had a mom call me the other night, and I've been working on her case with her for about 1.5 years, and I really didn't think she was going to lose. I know most of them are, but her case just didn't have that much in it for her to lose custody. She did, and she got 1 hour visit. Another mom I went and court watched with, and I told her before her case, I said, you probably will lose custody after I read her file, and you might end up with 1 hour supervised visit a week. And I thought, what a horrific thing to do, because I'd never, I wish somebody could have given me a heads up to what was coming. But, even to say such a horrific thing to Mom, I knew that she wasn't going to believe it, but at least it prepared her somewhat for what was coming. And I watched that case, and the social services attorney, the social worker, the GAL, and the father's attorney all recommended that he get custody, and this man was abusive. He beat her, he broke her nose, he did horrible things to animals, and the guy's really sick. And he got custody, and her little 3-year-old she sees him 1 hour a week. I haven't heard from her since, and she's probably in bed. I can't get a hold of her. So what are we doing here, people? I mean, where's the public in this? Where is our court system? You know, how high up does this go? I mean, in government-wise, how high up are we going here that we can't get anything done and can't get people to listen?
Well,
you know, 58,000 children a year are having to go live with their abusers.
Yeah, you're kind of answering your own question when you ask how high does it go, and the men, the fathers, get to draw from a federal fund, a taxpayer fund, to help them get money to fight that.
It's amazing, isn't it? We get nothing but fathers, because of the fathers' rights and the federal funding that goes into this, blow your mind how much money is going that direction.
Well, Maralee, you know, when I was a young boy, it was virtually unheard of for a father to get custody of his child or children. It was just unheard of.
Yeah, you'd have to be a pretty sick mom, and I think that's probably what's carried over here with social wars, is that, you know, I was so horrified to tell people that I lost custody. I mean, they had to think I was a drug addict, an alcoholic, a prostitute. Something's wrong with this mother. And here I am, as healthy as could possibly be, and healthier than not. And what about all these moms? And you're right, that didn't happen. And it is a total reverse. I mean, it's to the degree of, it's huge. But if there's abuse, like I said, I just did an article in Women's E-News. And for those of you that are listening, that article, pretty much it's a synopsis of my case, but a synopsis of what's happening out here to women across the country and children.
Well, Maralee,
and what's that, Hank?
Are you going to describe this article?
Well, I can, yes. It's called, it's in News.
Actually, what I wanted to do first was introduce a friend of mine.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've seen other shows or not, but I have a sociologist on with me. Her name is Jill. Are you there, Jill? Would you like to say hello?
Hi, Stephen. Hello, everyone.
This is Maralee.
Hi, Maralee.
Hi, Jim.
Maralee, yes.
Yes.
Maralee,
yes.
Maralee, I've just been reading what you wrote. A document that's attached here that has 10 points about solutions. Is that your article? Yes. It's brilliant.
Oh, you did see the article?
Yeah, I've just read it now. It's brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased with it. I'm surprised they even printed it, but not really, because We News deals with women's issues all across the world, and the chief editor knows what's going on with these cases. And so, anyway, I think that article will help a lot of mothers out there in a lot of these cases, and let's hope a lot of people read it so we can make a difference here.
Well, what I'm really impressed with is, you know, it's completely congruent with what everybody says, and that is that we have to do something about the judges. We have to make the judges accountable.
There is no accountability for judges, and that's huge.
That's right.
And that's kind of what I think, my opinion and lots of other people's opinions. There's Cindy Dumas is with the National Coalition. I mean, I forget what it's not. I'm trying to think what hers is. I get them all mixed up because there's so many of them. But let's see, Cindy's is, gosh darn it, I don't know where I put that. I always get hers mixed up. Anyway, Save Kids International. Save Kids International, but she's real strong in this issue too. So we've got a lot of professionals out there that are working on this day and night. And it belongs in criminal court, but what we'd like to see is these judges held accountable. There needs to be accountability to these judges. They cannot just rubber stamp what social services says, or a custody evaluator like who I had. They cannot just rubber stamp these people. It needs to be an investigation. The child needs to come first. Safety of that child first.
Well, that's right, and that is one of the laws that you can use, isn't it? Where it says child first. The child first law is the primary law that really needs to be examined. You were just telling how you had all of this evidence with your 4-year-old daughter, and how of internal damage and everything, and still it was overridden.
Well, what they do is they suppress any of the evidence. They suppress the records. All those medical reports were just completely thrown out. That was never brought into account. And the judge on my case, the last judge that really suppressed all the information, he had an 18-page court order, and he stated that all that had been previously litigated. That was all new information. None of that had been litigated. So that was his way of getting around it. But they gagged me. I had a gag order, and they had the police there to arrest me. It's the only time anybody could come into court with me, because what they did is they filled the courtroom. And I don't know about a lot of these other malpractice cases, because the ones I've been to haven't had the courtroom filled like I did. So you could have nobody in there so they could do what they wanted. And when they filled the courtroom, on this day they didn't, because it wasn't to do with the sexual abuse allegations. And what they said, there's no sexual abuse in my case, but every single file at that time, when you had files, were stamped in big red letters, sexual assault case, although they wouldn't address the issue no matter what came out. And as I said earlier, and Jill, that I was very vocal, so I got news media behind me when they didn't touch this stuff. And the news was there outside the door that day, and I had full-page newspaper articles. When they were outside the door, when I left that day, I had a gag order. They wanted to talk to me, and I said, no, I have a gag order. I can't talk. But, I mean, my legs were shaking again so bad. I mean, it was like I had dry heaves. I couldn't even comprehend how they could ignore all this evidence, and they do it every day. How do judges ignore evidence of abuse? And why are they doing that? That's a huge, huge question.
That's the big question. That's the really big question. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more? That's a big question.
Well, I think a lot of it, I mean, it's lack of education, but there's something more to this. I don't know if it's money getting passed in and kickbacks. I don't know. All I know is I saw it happen. I think once it starts in a pattern and they use that parental alienation syndrome and they're not educated on what PAS really is. I mean, there's a difference between, there are parents that alienate another parent, but when it's a parental alienation syndrome used by Gardner, that whole theory takes it's like a monster's head. It's like a hydra head monster. It just takes hold, and you don't get out of it. And that's why these women aren't getting out of it. And that's why, again, I say, Stephen, sorry.
That's okay. I talked to an insider last night, a CPS. She's a whistleblower. I'm going to be getting her on soon. She said this fund that the men draw from is reportedly $50 million. Or, I'm sorry, $50 billion. But actually,
I didn't know how much. I knew it was huge, but I had no idea that much.
Actually, she said that isn't even the correct number. It is actually probably close to $1 trillion that they get to draw from the money. And there is kickbacks, judges, attorneys, the court system. They all get kickbacks.
Well, they work together. What it is it's click, and they all work together. Like we had a law here in Colorado that we just passed. It was SB 12, and it was like maybe last summer or sometime. And what it stated is all these court evaluators, CFIs, whatever you want to call them, they would have to say if they've worked with the attorney before, they've worked with all these people before, if they knew anybody in the case that they're working with before they could work a case. And then what we did is we put a cap on it because they're making $28,000, $30,000 evaluation, $20,000 mine was, and that was 20 years ago. So you can imagine what they make today. And those, all that money going into that is everybody's paying everybody. You know, the GAL gets money. Some of these GALs are taking money both ways. They'll take the money from the parents, and they're taking money through the court system. It's unbelievable what's going on. And the money, anyway, we put a cap on it to $2,000, so they couldn't get any more than $2,000 on a custody evaluation. Guess what they did? They changed their names to PREs, so now they can privately charge what they want to charge.
PRE?
PRE, they don't have to go under the guidelines because
What's a
they're personal,
PRE?
they're private. I'm not sure what that PRE stands for. It's just private, whatever. He's an evaluator of some sort. I mean, that's what most of them have done, so that way they don't have to be under the standard of only $2,000 per evaluation. They're private. They're not within the court system. So you're a private one, and you get to charge what you wanted again. So they went around the legislation is what they did. They went around it. And, there's the money, like this woman, social worker just told you. I had no idea it was that high, but I know for a fact that they're drawing on that money. And when men come out of prison after they possibly killed someone or abused someone or raped someone or whatever reason they're coming out of prison, these fathers have more rights to try and get back with their children and get all the help and the money and everything they possibly could want.
It's like the swing of the pendulum, like it was unfair for the fathers, and now in their efforts to correct it, because the money is there in the efforts to correct it, they've been overly enthusiastic and the pendulum swung right over to the other direction. And now the fathers, yeah.
Yes, and my case and most of these cases, the women end up paying child support. So it's a huge avenue for a father not to have to pay child support if he gets the children. Then it's two double-edged sword, because what the judges, like you said, are not held accountable for, when there's domestic violence going on, and that's in part they don't even deal with that. What we're trying to do is get them to deal with domestic violence, get them to deal with the child abuse and the safety of that child. They don't even want to look at it. And then, they are saying, they want to say women make this stuff up. There's stats that will prove that it's 2% of all custody cases, any kind of sexual abuse comes up. Men are way more likely. I guess it's like a 21% to 1.3% women, 21% of men making up false allegations or false things within the court. That's studies that have been done. And Daniel Saunders, who's a big psychologist and has done the studies on this, is another perfect person to look at for what is really going on in the stats and the standards of what's happening in our courts. So when you go back to what you were saying, I mean, if these women are having to pay child support and they're completely depleted financially, how do they get their kids back? You can't imagine the monies you go through. So it's not just fathers getting money through the government. They're getting money from the very person that's trying to protect her child.
Yeah, and there's that word, who's getting money from who, and it's about security and everything. When you look at the underlying thing about money, it's that's where we're basing our sort of so many desires. But it's just horrendous, sorry. I just cannot, I'm thinking, the thing that sort of kept coming to my mind during this was, I wonder if we should just, because when we're in love and we fight and everything, everybody says, oh, look, I just hit you, but I'm sorry about that. And the other person says, oh, he or she just hit me, and, we don't want to end our relationship over this moment of sort of fighting. But it seems to me as though there needs to be something more studied about the cycle of violence, and also maybe if people had a record of the physical abuse when it happened, criminally sort of lodged, which women are so loath to do, there would be a stronger history there. I just wonder.
Well, honestly, what I did way back then, which was really a smart thing, was my daughter was waking in the night, screaming out in the night, and yelling out, no, Daddy, don't. Owie, it's bad. 5 and 6 times a night she was up screaming that. And she told me in detail what was happening to her, and I tape recorded all that. I didn't tape record. What I did is I put a voice-activated tape recorder by her bed at night, because I was up with her 5 and 6 times a night, and that was, obviously her cries and what she was saying was coming out on that tape. And I gave those to the guardian ad litem on my case and said, because nobody would listen, and I begged social services, dear God, come live with me for just a night and witness what my child's going through. I'll pay you. And they wouldn't. And then I gave the tape to the GAL, and the GAL listened, and it was horrendous. I mean, it would break your heart to hear what I was hearing and what was on that tape. And what I did was she said I took it to get copies. And when the lady that handed me the copies said to me, with tears in her eyes, "This is child abuse, isn't it?" And I said, "It's something that you would say that." That's, I said, because everybody in the system is not protecting my daughter, and the GAL that just listened to this said it was ambiguous. And she goes, "Oh my God, everybody in here listened to this, and we were all sick."
Hey, Maralee.
Oh, yeah.
I need to beg your patience one more time. I want to write that doctor's name down because I'm going to do a little research on him. And then I've got a little thing I need to tell you. Go ahead and tell me his name again.
Dr. Richard Gardner.
Gardner. Okay, Richard Gardner.
Yeah, he has his book is called Parental Alienation Syndrome. And
okay.
He wrote several books, but this is the one that took hold in the courts in the early 80s.
Yeah.
You know him, Stephen. We've been talking about him before.
Right,
and this isn't this the expert on you have an expert on Gardner coming on, you were telling me.
I don't know about that, but
well, Gardner's dead. What happened with Gardner is I think it was about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I have it on some work, but anyway, he committed suicide, and he stabbed himself 7 times in his chest and in his neck. And that's somebody who's real credible. He stated that he went to Columbia. He was a professor at Columbia University. He was on a volunteer staff. He was never a professor there. And the fact that I actually went on CNN International News with my story about 10 or 15 years ago, and he was actually on there. It was called the Parental Alienation Syndrome. And then it was like, what is it? Oh, it's an incredible. They did an incredible job. Hour-long program on what was happening. They did my case. They went through the whole thing with my case, and they put the doctors on and all the professionals that were stating there was abuse going on here. And Gardner was on there, and they went after him big time. In fact, Gardner was paid in my case as the GAL was. I actually have the checks that she wrote to pay Gardner on my case. She paid Gardner? Yeah. You're like a direct contact with Gardner. That's extraordinary. So yeah. Just tell us a bit more about that, will you? I think because everybody, so many of the women who complain about this, it's always, Gardner, and parental alienation syndrome, and you actually had him do something. He set such a precedent and has led the courts in such a direction to believe this parental alienation syndrome was a real thing. And it has been debunked, but you have an actual contact with Gardner in your case. Right. When CNN did my story, they came in to do it, and they, it was Kathy Slobogan and Judy Woodruff, and, they came in, and when they did, it was like I had to give them a lot of information, and when I did, it was like question after question. Nobody would believe this was going on, and the general public would never believe it. But when you go up against this and you're trying to get a news media to cover this, I was hit every direction. I finally just got upset, and I said, Kathy, read my file, read the stuff. I can't continue to answer all this. You need to read. And I had a federal judge that was helping me with my case because by the end I was so bankrupt, I went pro se. I was representing myself, and I knew to tell him, only give him little bits and pieces at a time, because if I ever gave it all to him, he would never have gotten it. He wouldn't have believed me. So I gave him little bits and pieces at a time to educate him is really what I was doing. That's why I say these judges need education. And when I did that, he got it, but it was a long process of him getting it. And then he helped me file my motions and stuff. He didn't, he was retired, so what he would do is I would do all the motions, but then when I'd have him critique them, and then at that point I was turning incredible motions, and they're thinking, where did she come from? How can she do this so well? Well, that was part of it. But anyway, back to Gardner. They used Gardner in my case. As I told you, the 2 therapists that ran this document to a judge on a Monday morning with a docket full and removed my child from me, ex parte emergency hearing, where I never got her back for 8 years. They actually, Underwater and Wakefield and Gardner were totally in my divorce, not my divorce, on my court order. And Gardner has had a huge effect on everybody on this. I mean, it's for our courts to still be using parental alienation syndrome is absolutely sick. And they use it, and they use it, and they use it. And it's a father's rights way of getting control and custody. And most of those men are abusers. Domestic violence is there. And when they lose that control of that woman through that divorce, they're going to get control through those kids. So, if people think, these poor fathers out there, oh my God, it is so out of control, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Maralee, I know of a personal case. This was back in the mid-'80s, actually. Come to think of it now, the man I know was, he had a 3-year-old son, and he got custody of his son, and it was nearly unheard of, like I said, here in Michigan, anyways. And he claimed to the court that the mother was a drug addict and a very bad mother, and fortunately for him, she was a drug addict because he was her supplier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know. It's scary,
but,
isn't it?
he kind of failed to mention that, though, but I don't know.
Well, and the other side of it is what these, I don't want to give out too much information here in case they're listening, which they probably are, but it's a little scary because it's a planned thing. I know they get on the internet, they know how to use PAS. There's attorneys out there that are giving these fathers information of how to do what they do. And it's working in the courts because our courts are not investigating these cases.
Aren't they also specializing in it too?
Safety. What's that?
Aren't they also specializing in it also? The PAS?
I know there's one woman out of Houston that specializes, and I saw her on the internet one time. I was just kind of, going through stuff, and I saw her actual, way she makes money. Pay me $50, and I'll give you the information on this, and this, and then she puts it all in there. How to litigate, what to do, how you can get the woman, how you can put them in a vulnerable position. Like the domestic violence thing. Usually these men know how to work this, and they stalk you. And like my ex would stalk me, and they work it to where they get it on the woman versus really what they're doing. Because women are kind of naive to what's coming down. And it's not necessarily they're being beaten to death. They don't have to be beaten to death. There's a lot of emotional abuse going on to the point that they don't know what's going on. And then most of them, they're being hit. Something's gone on violent in their cases, but not all of them.
Yes. Maralee, do you know of Dr. Sonia Vaccaro, yes. She's from Spain.
Don't.
She's from Spain. Yeah, I did an interview with her yesterday through a translator.
Oh, yeah, I was trying to listen to that one, yes.
Yes, okay.
Tell me more.
But, she's under the same impression that I am, that there's a global ring that's actually behind this. It's I think it's a pedophile ring behind this, and behind the whole parental alienation syndrome fallacy, if you will, just the entire deal, how these abusing men can be getting their children.
Well, it definitely is. I mean,
there
the pedophiles are on the internet all the time, and they are in together. I mean, they are swapping pictures. They're doing all kinds of things. Nobody.
Yes,
I used to always say to the news reporter that covered my story, and they covered it for weeks at a time, and you would think that would have brought my child back. But I told her, get his computer. Please, just get his computer. I laid my life on it that there was child porn on the computer.
Yeah. I want to ask you about something you said about Richard Gardner, Dr. Gardner.
Okay.
You happened to mention that he had a phrase or something that I believe you quoted him as saying that there's a little bit of pedophilia in all of us.
Yes.
Okay.
He states that. He did state that. That's in his book.
I haven't even researched him yet. Do you know what his age was approximately when he died?
I know he was, let's see, if that was my case, I would say he's about 10 years older than me, and and he died, I'd say probably 60.
Somewhere in the
At the time
60s?
he died, 62, 63,
Okay.
somewhere in there, I don't know. I mean, I have all his documentation and all the proof on him and what he did. I remember seeing him on a talk show once, and he was being really chastised for what he was doing, and he said, I say it like it is, and what he wants is these women need to be jailed and gagged.
Yeah.
And so that's what they were pushing, is that I was gagged, but they were pushing me to go into jail because I wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
And that's through him. That's through his stuff, stating jail these women, gag them, make them wake up to what they're doing. You know, in other words, you're falsifying this stuff. And in actuality, he said, there was another thing he said about children, that the men have you have the choice to love who you want. That's your freedom of choice to love who you want. Oh my gosh, you can love who you want if it's a child in a physical, sexual way.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what that does to them?
Yeah, the reason I ask
Maralee,
Maralee...
that's what he says too. It's incredible.
The reason I ask Maralee is because this sounds very, very eerily familiar to Dr. Alfred Kinsey. He was the sexual researching doctor back in the 40s and 50s, and he's the one that wrote the 2 books that led into the sexual revolution of the 50s and 60s.
Well, the studies he did on children, right?
Yes, I do. I've read the book, and I've
not all is coming from that. I agree with you on that. I think that all of this is coming from that, and it's so hard for the mind to think that people actually think like that. And then when you go into go ahead. Yeah, Joe?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, because I agree with both of you 100%, but I'm trying to work out the logical fallacy how we do this, because what happens is to say there's a murderer in every one of us or a pedophile in every one of us is acknowledging a slight potentiality that is not, I don't recognize a potentiality, if you're looking at in terms of the psyche as being something absolutely massive. But there's so many, to take that from the position of saying anyone has human potential for anything if given the right conditions in which it grows, because so many of these pedophiles have been reared in conditions in which this did grow, to turn it into the next statement that we make, that everybody makes, that it's okay to do it, is a completely huge jump. And there's in logic and reasoning, Stephen, there's a name for that that fallacy, that logical fallacy. But and that's so often how people get away with these statements or get misunderstood on these statements.
Yeah, Jill.
Yeah.
Don't forget, in about 30 seconds or so, we got a break coming up. So when you hear the music, we're going to be on a break.
Okay. Sounds good. I just want to say one thing to that comment. Is another thing that he states is that, to tell the child that you're abusing, this is Gardner, to tell the child that you're abusing that this is love and this has been happening, for centuries, and it's acceptable behavior, and for people to tell you it's wrong, it's not a wrong thing, it's love, and he actually states that stuff. I mean, so it's been an accepted, to tell the child that this is
all right,
not a
Maralee,
wrong thing.
we're on a break now.
Okay.
We got the break. We'll come back. We'll come right back and get some more.
Okay, sounds good.
FreedomSlips.com. We'll be right back. busy reporters looking for an answer it doesn't have.
Maybe the brain is
the neurobiological system seems steadily to run. It releases its need. Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting with danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. Roll on, big mama. Roll on, big mama. I like the way you sing. We'll be here, right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. till 5 p.m. Eastern Time, for the freedom writer herself, Miss Zita Andrews with Constitutional Patriots, bringing it to you straight from the road, keeping you up to date and aware of what's going on in the vascular system of the land of the free and the home of the brave. So, don't miss an episode. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, and now it's on the move. Through my mind. Roll on, big mama. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival from gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about. We'll plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it, I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? We'll squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bulk drives. Get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Ever feel as though human beings are being harmed? You know, your food is chosen by the FDA, you're told what drugs you can take, what drugs you can't take, what drugs you must take. Your productive value is harvested from your daily sales tax, income tax, property tax, utility bills, mortgages, interest payments. When you exercise a bit of freedom on feed or food, traveling or other matters, the farmer cracks down on you. Ever thought of leaving the farm? Learn how. Join Pat and Tammy for Leaving the Farm, Saturdays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio A. See you there, or at the feed trough.
What do you think of it? I don't know.
Therefore, gentlemen, join me, Joe Kiernan, Dr. J, every Sunday from 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight for Researchers on a Mission Radio. We will be interviewing guests in ufology, experts on the paranormal, and stories from you, the listener. Every Sunday, 10 p.m. in Studio B. Join us for some amazing conversations and edge-of-your-seat true thrillers. Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another? Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make
no,
a purchase.
no.
I'm sorry you had
Come on. It's for starting.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, and above all, we believe in freedom of existence and self-reliance. This station is 100% listener supported and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if the prices go crazy, tickets to pay it, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need to actually start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning, how to do everything website, all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
We go live. Let's go to the sun.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, and welcome back, everybody. As the commercial said, we are listener supported. There are some commercials in there, so I'm not sure if we are advertisement supported also, but if you can find a few extra washers or a few extra pennies here and there, go hit the donate button, drop it in Revolution Radio. I guess while I got a few seconds here also, Tyler Davenport is going to be making his debut on tonight, a little bit later, about 7 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio, so I'm not sure what studio he's going to be on, so check him out a little bit later on. But are you back now, Maralee?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay. Do I have you too, Jill?
I actually came back with the actual documentation and the proof of what's going on with Gardner, and I'd like to read some of that paraphernalia or things that he's written and get more information, if that's okay.
Sure. I wanted to mention too that do you know of Dr. Judith Reisman? I had her on quite a few months back. She's the one that blew the lid off of Dr. Alfred Kinsey and his pedophilia ring.
Great.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking to get her back on again. So.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Well, I'm just going to read a few things here to the listeners, and if there are women that are involved in this, they know this stuff. But where I said right here, it says pedophilia has been considered the norm by a vast majority of individuals in the history of the world, and that's in his 1992 book, page 593. His view on sexual abuse perpetrators: our society takes an excessively punitive and moralistic attitude towards those who act out their pedophile impulses. So, in other words, we shouldn't be taking that punitive view. In the history of the world, his behavior has probably been more common than restrained behaviors of those who do not sexually abuse their children. 1992 book, page 585. This is another thing that I thought was interesting. Where is that?
More while you're looking for that, that's exactly where the problem arises, is where the difference between an impulse and the cause and effect of an action is what people have to recognize. An impulse may be one thing, but the effect upon the child is so devastating, and it's not argued from the effect. It's argued from it being an okay impulse, as though all impulses are okay.
Yeah, Maralee, you happened to mention that your daughter, at the age of 2.5, did a very sexually suggestive action, didn't she? Something about a little boy, and you can stick it here or something like that?
No, that too, but the very first time, that, you do not at that age demonstrate something like that. And she would, try and get the other kids to touch her there in the daycare. Her whole behavior changed drastically. That wasn't me bringing it forward. That was her daycare provider. And then also, when they put her in foster care, she was so traumatized from that foster care, where Gardner states in here to put these kids in foster care, and make them wake up at their young age that they know they've done something wrong by talking about this. And that is so traumatizing. That's the way he did it. Yeah, put her in foster care. And then,
you're going, sorry.
No, I was just saying that whole thing was a planned thing to his theories. You put these kids in foster care, and so they know they've done something wrong. If it's a healthy parent that has the child, and usually that's when they really use the parental alienation syndrome, because that healthy child is the one that's going to talk. My daughter talked. My daughter never stopped talking. Even through the worst of it, she would say things like, my daddy says he won't do this anymore, and she told him it's bad, but he still does. He won't, in other words, she's telling me he won't stop. Well, they don't stop. And then we have the whole system.
Well, what Gardner's saying is illogical anyway, because originally he's saying it's okay to have these impulses, and then in the next breath or sentence he's saying that the children should there be shown that it's wrong and put in foster care.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is just there's just no logic in that, and also really you must check, which we all already obviously are looking at, what is his motives really for wanting to put them into foster care.
Well, there was no grounds to do that, and that's his way of trying to get the child to shut up, because it's a punishment to the child to be taken away from the good parent and the loving parent, and the parent that's not hurting them. At that young of an age, for a child to know that that's something wrong and not hurting them, obviously that's wrong. That shouldn't be an accepted. Here's another thing Gardner says. He says he must learn to control himself, meaning the pedophile, if he is able to protect himself from the draconian punishment methods out in on those of our society who act out at their pedophilia and impulses. He says
there's no consequence to the child, is there? This is the point. It's not a child-first approach, is it? There's no recognition on how pedophilia harms children severely in our society, particularly, but how bad it is for the child.
Hey, Maralee.
Well, he says for younger children who refuse visitation, Gardner suggests temporary placement in a foster home or a shelter for abused children.
Maralee, you know what makes me believe that that there's a ring behind this? It began in 1985, and I know for a fact many years, when a child molester got thrown into prison, They were mainly put into the general population, and they didn't really last very long in there, and they didn't really do very well either, because murderers and drug dealers and people like that really don't take kindly to people that hurt children. That's really
that's
one of the main
right.
things.
I mean, I agree with that. Yeah.
And I think that's where this worldwide pedophile ring really finally stepped in and took charge of the Congress and had these things passed. Because, well, I don't want to play partisan politics here, but it is a well-known fact that the organization called NAMBLA is tied to the hip with the Democratic Party of America, and they basically get whatever they want as far as going to Congress.
Well, you know that, I mean, I found this kind of amazing as I was learning all this and going through this, is that people, like we know now today, everybody thought the pedophile was the boogeyman around the corner, or the derelict, whatever, the spooky boogeyman, or the bad man, whatever. But these people are your bankers, are your high-up politicians. It goes all the way up to the top.
Yes,
so
they are.
A lot of that pedophilia ring is coming from the very top all the way down. You're not just fighting. This is not a small issue you're fighting, and it's way bigger than anybody knows. And some of it feels like it's spiritual warfare for those women out there that are strong Christians and have seen this. It's almost like a spiritual warfare. You can't even comprehend that it can go the direction it's going. But it's more than that. It's money, and it's all the way at the top. And until we get to the top, it's just like, I was thinking of one of the
and it's also power too.
Ducote. It's what?
It's also power too. The bully gets
the
the power.
Yeah, it's huge. Well, it's not power and control.
Yes.
If they control our children, what do you think? You control the minds of children. What are you doing to your society?
You're controlling the future.
You look at,
yes.
Sure, you're controlling the future. And when you look at I was thinking of like Richard Ducote. He's an attorney in all these cases, and he said he endorsed my book or did my foreword in my book. And one thing he stated in there was, how upset society got at Sandusky, and yet, it was like that was just horrific, and it is horrific. And then you go to the Catholic priest and how horrific that was to know what was going on there. But the biggest gatekeeper and the biggest criminal of all of this is our court system.
Yes.
I mean, the work that they're unequivocally ignoring evidence and doing what they're doing. They're the gatekeeper of these children's safety, and they're not protecting them.
And Maralee, you know about the Sandusky case. Sure, he was a bad guy, but number one, the blame goes in the media. It goes in the court system over there in that area. Mm-hmm. That court system, the police knew about them boys way back in 1994, and they did nothing. And the media knew about it way back in 1994. They hushed it up too. They did nothing.
I find it very, very difficult.
The FBI knew about it too.
Take hold of this. They do. I mean, it's especially like with somebody like Sandusky or the Catholic priest. It was
no,
hard.
they had to admit it. They had to come out and admit it. The media did. They knew about it back in 1994, and it was it was just poo-pooed. They just blew it off somehow, but they can
do that.
It.
I mean, when they have the right then they went into legislation. Pennsylvania man ban. We're going to legislation. We're going to stop this. But it takes, I don't know what it's amazing to me what it takes to break this ring of pedophiles and to stop what's going on. And I know, and I think a lot of people know what's going on, but to get to the bottom of it and to get people, it's the normal people out there that don't have this touch their lives, and it's such a horrific, dirty, horrible thing going on. They sweep it under the carpet. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to know it. I mean, even in my own family had a hard time dealing with this. My mom and dad were 199% there, and they fought all the way through, and my mother wrote to every senator and every congressman in the nation, and she never stopped fighting. She was incredible. But, you know...
Well, you were seen as a blight
hard.
on the family, though, Maralee.
What was that?
So you were seen as a blight on the family. That's why.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was like it was just shocking. It was just a shocking... That's why I say, if you think it can't happen to you, it can. And it can touch it's touching everybody's lives. And I remember my mom wrote an article in the newspaper after this big article came out on my case, and they were stating how there were over 250 evaluated people involved in this case and where it was going. And then I had a huge rally at the Capitol. And I had women coming in from all across the nation, and there's this attorney. Her name was Joan Pink, and I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent here, but it's an important part of the story, is she's the forerunner on all this stuff. I mean, she was in the forefront. She was an abused woman. She was domestic violence. She had 5 kids. The father or the husband beat her in one eye until she went blind in that eye. And then once she went blind in that eye, he started the other eye. She could not get any help. Now, you got to imagine this was way before my time because she was quite a bit older than me. And she would sit on the Capitol steps and try and get help, and nobody would help her. So anyway, she ends up going to law school, and she gets her law degree. And she's working at a domestic shelter, something to do with domestic violence, and she kept getting calls from women like myself. And at first, she thought they were all crazy. And then she just got more and more. Well, she's done a lot of studying on this and on gender bias issues and on the pedophilia side of it and what the courts are doing. And she also testified before Congress. But we got in contact, and this is back in, I have to say what year that was, like maybe 92, let's say 87. Yeah, about 91 or so. And we planned a rally at the Capitol. It took 6 months to plan. And I lost my daughter 7 days before that rally, but that was all coming down behind my back. They didn't know I was even doing this rally, but it didn't matter. It was going to go that direction anyway. And we brought in senators, and we brought in musicians and mothers from all across the country. And I just watched that video maybe a year ago. I hadn't watched it for the whole time, just didn't have the nerve to take a look at it. And I watched it, and I went, oh, my God. I watched these women get up on those Capitol steps and their hearts being ripped out and them telling their story and what happened to them. And I thought, oh, my God, nothing's changed. And Joan Pennington got up there, and she was a very powerful woman, and she said, this rally was brought here today by Maralee Mclean, and we are going to make a list of judges that are not protecting these kids. We used to make a list of attorneys and what was going on, but now we're going after the judges. And the first judge on that list is going to be Maralee Mclean's judge, Judge Michael Beta. And then she said, this is like, nobody wanted to listen to domestic violence for 20 years. They still don't, but this was 20 years ago, so that was 20 years, that's 40 years ago. And nobody wanted to listen to domestic violence. And she said, and it's like, this is like the civil rights back to the 60s. This is the movement of the 90s. Now, where are we? We're in 2014, and nothing has changed. Nothing. So,
What stopped that? What happened? Because there you had a judge saying we're going to do something about this, and then she didn't.
Now, what was that? I didn't hear you, honey.
I'm saying, I wonder what stopped that, because, there you have a judge saying we're going to do something about this, and then it didn't happen.
Well, my judge, actually, of the history of Colorado, there's only been like 2 judges removed from the bench for maybe 20 years, and my judge was one of them removed from the bench. And that took a lot of picketing, and that took a lot of attorneys going after him, but he did get removed from the bench. That's very, very unlikely to happen.
Yeah, look, I'm wondering, Stephen's just agreed I can just lead this slightly. I was just reading, would you mind if I read out from your article about the first day you realised what happened to Amy? Or would that be too powerful?
Well, okay. I'm a little, I don't know. You mean the part where she was brought down the stairs?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. It's out there in public anyway.
Okay, and then after that, I know it's going to be hard, but then after that, I thought once people get the impact, Stephen and I agreed we wouldn't mind taking you through those those 10 points of legal remedies, because we only have another sort of 40 minutes, and I think if we have, the suffering and then the path out of the suffering, it would be a good way to go.
Okay, so do you want to read that, or you wanted me to read that?
You can read it if you like. Otherwise, I will. It's up to you.
No, I mean, I can just state what happened. I mean, I can read it from the actual document. It was actually a lot more than what was in there, because I obviously had to cut it.
All right,
a lot of stuff out.
Yeah.
I'll state what happened. My daughter was beautiful. I mean, everybody thinks their little girl's beautiful, but I swear she was just a doll. And I was going to work, and at that point I was working on the ground because I didn't want to fly, and so I started selling yellow page advertising so I wouldn't have to be away from her. So, anyway, I'd stay home in the mornings with her, and I took her to the daycare provider about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that morning, we got up, and I was getting ready to take her or whatever, and she counted the stairs up to 20, or 16. There were 16 stairs, so she counts the 16 stairs, which are a real young age to do that. And I'm getting her ready, and I put this beautiful, put her in the bath, and then I put Baby Johnson's baby lotion all over her, and then she put her in a beautiful little pink dress and put her hair in a high ponytail. She had long dark hair and put a high ponytail, and literally I couldn't walk down the street with her without people stopping me to talk to her because her eyes danced, absolutely danced. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, this is before I knew about the abuse, so I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, he's going to go nuts over her, because he wasn't really involved in her life. That's one of the main reasons I filed for a divorce, amongst other things. He was horrible to me during my pregnancy, and I made my mind up I was leaving him after she was born. So anyway, he didn't really have much to do with her, but now he had limited visitation twice a week, and I'm thinking he's going to go nuts over her when he sees her because she's so cute. And I take her to the babysitter, and then I picked her up. He had like a 3-hour visit from 4 to 7. I go to pick her up, and I knock on the door, and he doesn't answer for a long time. He finally comes to the door, and her clothes are strewn all over the living room floor, and her beautiful little pink dress. And I'm like, where is she? And he says he goes to get her. And he comes down a few moments later down the stairs, and she's wet, nude, and limp in his arms. And it still kills me, but, and her ponytail's out, and her hair's all matted to her head. And my gut just wrenched, and I pulled tight. I said, what the hell happened to her? And he said she's sick. And I said, that's funny. She was fine a few hours ago. And I got her clothes together and got her dressed and got her out of there. And I got her home, and, once she was home and everything was okay, and gave her a bath and, got her to bed or whatever. And, that used to wake me up in my sleep. I literally would be sound asleep. I can say it like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd just right out of bed and just go, oh, my God, because he had this smirk on his face. It was like that of O.J. Simpson's, when he was getting away with what he was getting away with. And he's a true sociopath. Most of these people are. He's brilliant. He's got a genius IQ. He's very, very smart. And it was like he looked at me with, you idiot, Maralee, I just raped your child and you didn't even get it. That's what I felt like when I knew what was going on later, and I didn't know then. I knew, but I didn't, so I just shut out of the bed. I would just be like, oh my God, it just would shoot me out of the bed 2 in the morning over and over again. That whole picture of her coming down the stairs like that, knowing later the detailed stuff that was going on. And I could go into a lot of detailed stuff that was absolutely horrific of what she told me and what was going on.
Maralee, I want to go back to the beginning of the interview. You happened to mention, you said your sister is a nurse, and she told you not to mention her father being the abuser?
Yeah, she didn't know. She just said to me, I don't know where she got it, and this was way back, so why she didn't even know anything like that. But she said to me, I told her what she had said, and she said, don't say anything to her. When she wakes up in the morning, after she's had a night's sleep, just ask her what she was saying to me about that. And don't mention her dad's name, just see if she repeats the same thing. And she did. So, and then when she was in therapy, she said, I said, could she be saying, because I didn't want to believe it was him, could she be saying it's her dad, but it's somebody else? And she goes, that's like trying to tell her you're not her mommy, So, I mean, and then she even told her therapist. Now, this was a therapist. The therapist that stated my daughter was being abused was removed from the case. They removed the therapist that stated she was being abused and put on a therapist that they wanted, that what they would have control of. So it's that click thing I'm telling you about. And that therapist, I didn't know it. I'm paying her $85 an hour. I'm going through thousands and thousands of dollars, legal fees, everything else, and I'm totally stressed because I'm taking my daughter to therapy and knowing what's happening to her, and I'm up with her all night long. And I go to the therapist, taking her to this therapist, and she was to do no abuse therapy, no sexual abuse therapy, so all she was doing was playing with her in there. And I'm up all night with her screening and her telling me more detailed stuff, and what her, she's masturbating, she's all kinds of things, and so I tell the GAL, my God, what my child's going through, and I know this is a new GAL, and I said, you got to do something. I mean, this is unbelievable. And if I was to bring up the abuse again after she got out of foster care and she got to come home to me, and I lost 50% visitation. I mean, I was reduced. I lost custody. It was moved to joint custody because I wouldn't shut up, and then I was reduced time to like 50% at this time. And I remember calling this attorney, Alan Rosenfeld, who was a big attorney and all this way back then, and I had seen this article, Runaway Moms, in the paper, and I thought, my God, is this where I'm heading? That I'm not going to be able to protect her? And so Alan said to me, Maralee, be glad you got 50% of the time with her, because most of these mothers lose their children completely. I said, but Alan, you're asking me to be the best mom that you can be for the next 2 or 3 years. Save as much money as you can, because you're going to need it. And don't bring up the abuse again. I thought, he is off the wall. How can I ignore what my daughter's going through? And have to hand her over. How many people can hand their child over to a rapist? But if I didn't, I was going to lose her completely. So I knew once I got her back out of foster care not to bring up the abuse again. But she was coming home with a severe discharge and in pain, and her panties reeked. And I had new attorneys, and I told them what was going on and how bad she was doing and the pain she was in. And they said, take her. Oh, I know. I called the policeman. This is another important part of my stuff that I didn't go into. There was a detective in my case that when she was 3.5, I had picked her up at her dad's one night from a visit, and if I wasn't there, I went back to flying so I could free up my time to fight this case. I was a senior, and I only had to work 10 days a month. So I was flying, and he got her anyway, so if I wasn't back by 7 o'clock, he got to keep her overnight. Well, my flight was late, and I drove 100 miles an hour to get to her, and when I got there, she was, he wouldn't give her to me, and all I could think of is if she stayed there another night, she was going to be raped again, and I had to get her out of there. But, he was doing it during the day. She told me he did it in the baby seat when she's in the baby seat, and he's in the big seat. He pulled alongside the road, and that, it didn't matter when it was. So, anyway, I called the police came, and they gave her to me, thank God. And when she got in the car, she said to me, my daddy touched me again. And I said, honey, while I was gone? And she said, yes. And I said, I'm doing everything I can to stop this. I don't know what else to do. Well, could you hit his hands for me? And we got home, and I put the voice active tape recorder by her bed, and she demonstrated what her dad was doing to her, and told me, I can't even say this on the air because I just can't, but, anyway, so the next day I'm so sick, I get her to sleep, and I call friends of mine who are doctors, and I told them what was going on and what I had on tape, and they said, that's it. So they call the police, and the police come to my home the next day, and I'm literally having like a heart attack, anxiety attack is what it is, but I thought I was dying of a heart attack. And he said, no, you're just having an anxiety attack. Anyway, he interviews my daughter. Now, she's 3, a little bit over 3 years old, and he goes through good and bad touch with her, and he says, has anyone ever touched you in a way that made you feel funny or uncomfortable? My daddy did. Where did he touch you? And she said, she pointed to her vagina area, my pee-pee. And then he said, he took out what is your dad touching you with? And she said, it's red, and it's hard, and it hurts. And then he drew I had an anatomical drawing of a male and a female, and he said, "Can you tell me on this chart, the male and the female, where you've been touched?" And she drew red on the vagina area, and then flipped the chart over and drew red on the anal area. And she said that he tried to get a time frame of when, because to get it to go to criminal court, he needed a time frame of when it happened, and obviously she's too little. And so he said, "When did it happen?" And she said, "Yesterday." We said, "Yesterday, yesterday." She couldn't say yesterday. And so anyway, he said he was going to take it to criminal court, and he said it's going to be an uphill battle against social services. But I said, "I can't give her to him again. I can't." And he said, "You go ahead." I went to Vail and stayed at some friend's house up in Vail, and he said, "You go ahead and go. I will cover for you. Your child's not safe." Well, oh man, the battle really starts. Really starts. Huge. And I would go to the DA's office and try to get him to criminally prosecute this case. And I had a black book I put together, which I tell moms to do. In my book that I wrote, I give advice to mothers of the things they should do.
Is that a journal?
And I just did it. Huh?
Is that a journal?
Yeah, I kept a journal, but what I did is I put a black book together. Obviously, that journal, because I started writing my book when she was 2.5, when I saw the system not protecting her. So it took me 20 years to write this book. But what I did was I had a black book where I put all the motions in it, all the court documents, all the important stuff. I documented everything. And I think every mother should do that. So when I did that, I took that to the DA's office, and I shoved that in front of his face and said, "Please tell me, you have not had, you've had cases with 1/10 the evidence this case has, and you need to prosecute this case." And he said, "Maralee, I believe your child's been abused." And this was after I had all this news coverage, too. He said, "But
who said that?
The DA." And he said, "But let's see what the judge does in this case, and then we'll step in." Well, I lost her completely is what the judge did, and he did not step in. And actually, I had him on tape because I was smart, and I'm not telling other mothers to do this, but I wired myself going into his office, and I put it through my bra, and I went through those electrical machines and set everything off, and I said, "Oh, it must be my bra, my underwire, my bra." And my attorney was with me. He didn't know I'd wired myself, and I got in there and I wired that. Well, when it went on the news, it had him on the news admitting he believes my child's been abused. And then, I just did a lot of things. I didn't do criminal things. I guess that could be criminal, but I was trying to get any information I could and do anything I could to protect her. And so, where were we? Let's go back to, anyway, with the policeman. He knew my child had been abused, and right after, the day that I lost her, I had gone to talk to him and the sheriff to why they're not moving this case forward. And I had two of my best friends with me, are really healthy, normal women, good women, and they're so irate with what's going on. They start yelling in there, and they kick them out. And I was so used to being emotionally abused and torn apart and holding it together, because psychologically you really have to be strong and really have to hold it together. Mm-hmm. And so we're in there, and the policeman that knew that my daughter was being abused said to me, they're having a hearing on your case today. And I didn't even know about it, behind my back again. And anyway, it was at 4 o'clock or something. I found out about it last minute, and I said, "Perry, you know the truth." I said, "You witnessed what my daughter said. You told me nothing could ever change your mind with what you heard. She was very spontaneous." And he said, "Maralee, there's a day that goes by that I don't think about this case." And then I took a picture out of her, because she was beautiful. Well, by this point, I'm in supervised visits, and her hair is fallen out. She has hardly any hair left on her head. She's gaining a tremendous amount of weight. Her face is moon-shaped. And I said, "Perry, take a look at her now. Take a look at my daughter." He didn't look at pictures. I shoved him in front of his face, "Take a look." And then they said, "Do you mind if we tape record this?" And I said, "No." And I took my tape recorder out of my bra, and I said, "Do you mind?" and put mine right next to theirs. So I was fighting with everything I had.
Do you have your daughter in your life right now?
It's amazing, because all the women that went through this with me back then, and that I've been in touch with, which is almost all of them, they lost, but they didn't stay in the supervised visits, and so, they never got their children back, and they do not have relationships with their children.
No, but how about you?
And I do. I got my daughter back when she was 12 after eight years of supervised visits and treated as a criminal, like I told you. And I wasn't even allowed, if we went outside, the supervisor would walk on the outside of me like I was going to get in the car and run with her. And if I was going to run with her, I mean, sure, I thought about it. I'm not going to say I didn't. But if I was going to run, I'd have been gone when she was 2. I believed the system would protect my daughter. I was brought up to believe right is right and wrong is wrong, and they can't ignore all this evidence. Somebody's got to listen. Somebody's going to protect her.
Yeah.
And running, you have the FBI after you, and you come back and go to prison, and you never have your child again. So my logic was stay in there and fight. I will get her back. But, yeah, I stayed in the supervised visits, which is probably the most painful thing you can go through on earth, and for her and I. And she never let go of me. She would tell me, I fly to your house at night, Mommy, and I'm on the windowsill. I'm always with you. And she hung on to me for dear life, and I hung on to her for dear life. So, no, we have a great relationship today.
Well, that's good. You know, that's the big illusion. Sorry, Jill. That's the big illusion about the court system. There really is no justice for the poor and the middle class people, unless you have just unlimited amounts of wealth.
I mean, I lost everything, and I can't imagine women that don't have anything. I know one right now that lost both her little boy and her little girl, and she was breastfeeding her little boy at 6 months when they took him, and she has nothing. I mean, I at least had a career that I hung on to where I was making decent money so I could continue to fight, but even with what I was making, I lost everything. I mean, I remember when I went to work for, I decided I didn't want to, my base closed where I lived, and I would have had to commute to Newark for my trips, and I didn't want to miss my little supervised time with my daughter that I got. So because they would regulate it on the day that I would probably be flying, so I wouldn't see her. So I ended up selling cars, and I was probably the only woman selling cars. I had holes in my shoes. My friends would come to get me to go out to lunch. They'd go, "Oh, Maralee, you look so beautiful." And I'd say, "Really?" And I'd open up my coat, my lining shredded out of my coat. Yeah, I was down to nothing. I didn't have money for lunch. And what I did was I would sell cars like crazy and make a bunch of money. And then when I was going back to court, I tried not to make any money, so I tried not to sell a car, because then I could show I wasn't making income, so I wouldn't have to pay so much child support.
Maralee, what you've said is incredibly important. We've spoken with some other woman. I almost feel as though it's exactly the same story, who lost her child to the father, and in fact, Rachel Jones is doing it now. Where people just keep going to that little 1 hour window, and that little one, we found just some other woman had exactly the same sort of experience. She kept going to that 1 hour appointment, supervised access with her child every week, and maintained the relationship, and the child would fly home to her mother at night. Exactly the same thing.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Yes.
That is. One thing I put in my book that's really, I think, incredible is when I got my daughter back, she wrote this poem, and in that poem describes exactly where she's at mentally. And it's incredible what they do and how they survive and how they have to dissociate to survive. But that is neat. I mean, not neat. That's not neat to say. But yeah, my daughter hung on, and I think I know I tell moms this, and they just can't bear it. I mean, they go to bed, they die. They die. They absolutely die. And that's my avenue is, I'm not going to say run, because I don't believe in that either. But if you don't stay in those supervised visits, you will not have that relationship with your child. There's a mom that went on CNN with me. She was wonderful, and I was speaking. I was lobbying. I was speaking. I had news coverage. I mean, I never stopped. It was 24/7. Well, I went to speak in Dallas, Texas, and for a women's group there, it was, I don't know, a bunch of women, but anyway, I remember what it was, some organization, and I remember I was up on stage telling my story, and I was told there was another mother that was in Dallas that has the exact same case, was going through the same thing. And this was amazing. I walked off that stage and walked right into her. And she looked at me and I looked at her, and we held on to each other, and the pain from her just rushed into me, and it was like a circle, and mine was going into her. And I'm sure it's like people that have experienced death with their children, or like have had their kids' heads cut off or whatever. It's that horrific pain that nobody else knows but that mother. And for some reason, I met lots of mothers that her and I really connected. And she was on CNN. They did half with me, and then the last part of the CNN piece was with her case. And she did not stay in those supervised visits, and she lost her parental rights, and they were going to end my parental rights. It's a long story with that. I'm not going to go into detail, but that's not bad. It's just that they were doing everything they could to get rid of me. And she lost her parental rights because she did not stay in those supervised visits. And I kept in contact with her. When my book came out, I talked to her, and I said, I don't know that you're going to want to read it, and it'd be really hard for you, but she said, no, I want to read it. And I saw her last summer, and she said to me, and this still breaks my heart, she said, Maralee, I don't know if I can say it, but she said, Maralee, she said, my pain, you know my pain, and you know how hard I fought. And she said, and I just couldn't do it. But you keep going for the rest of us, and you keep going. And that's pretty much what I have. It's for the rest of you moms and babies. But she said she looks at her kids as if they're dead, and nobody even knows that she had 2 babies because she just couldn't do it anymore.
Mm. You're just amazing, Maralee. Yeah. Maralee, yes, Stephen, say it.
Did you want to go back through something there? I think you messaged me.
Well, this is Maralee's list of legal remedies, and I'll just talk for a minute while you sort of breathe, Maralee. Look, it's just extraordinarily wonderful what you are doing and what you're saying, and the importance of keeping that connection with your child, and to do that, to put that sort of your presence above your suffering for your child is the only solution. Because
you have to remain strong for that child, because if you don't, I mean, all she had was that hour with me, and I'm not a therapist, but what I did when I went in there was like a therapist. I was her mother. I made it fun. We did fun things in this little tiny room, 12 by 12 feet. The supervisor would write down everything we said, but never when she would talk about the abuse or talk about something that was happening to her that was a negative, would he write that down. And when she actually told him one time, she says, Mommy, I have red bumps. I have bumps down there, and she was trying to, and he said, do you want me to tell her therapist? You know, and meeting her therapist who's totally on her father's side, and her eyes got as big as saucers. No. I mean, come on. And I said to him, how can you do that to her? She's opening up. Why are you doing that?
You got lucky there, I think.
Hey, listen, what I want, Maralee, we've only got 15 minutes left, or probably 12 or something.
Okay, let's go.
You wrote a list of legal remedies. I have them here. I can either read them and you comment on them, or you can bring up the legal remedies and read them and comment on them yourself, whichever way you'd like to do it, because you are so solutions focused in this situation, and this is what people really need. And your list of remedies from your book is absolutely wonderful, and it agrees with what the human rights judges are saying as well. So, would you like to go through them? I'll read you the first one while you get them up, if you like.
You can do it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the first remedy you suggest, there's a list of 10, is move cases like this one to criminal courts, since sexual abuse and assault are crimes. If one adult does this to another, we call this a crime. Why not when a parent rapes and molests a child? Is that not so? Do not let this be addressed in family and child custody courts. And so the reason for that is because they're not equipped to cope with it, really, isn't it? And it is a criminal offence. And this is what Judge Carlos Rosansky, who's actually a child's rights lawyer from Argentina, and Grace Sheila Joffrey, who is listening today, are saying you have to put in the criminal report.
Yeah, it has to go, and it needs to go in criminal court. But what I think is the judges that are in criminal court on these cases are trained by domestic violence experts and by sexual abuse experts and by abuse of children, period, experts. They can't just be a judge that hasn't been trained in this. So, and then those judges need to be held accountable. Yes.
That's right. That's completely true. And second point, ensure safety first. And this is actually, somebody's kindly put this on this event on Stephen Roberts Live, or Stephen Roberts Cancel the Cabal's website if anybody wants it. Number 2, ensure safety first for children who report abuse, including safety from those about whom there are reports of sexual and other physical abuse.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just common sense, isn't it?
This is your list, isn't it? You wrote this, didn't you?
What was that?
This is your list. This is your writing, isn't it? It is. It's the one with the story of... Oh, I don't know. It's on this link that comes from Solar Flickr. Yeah.
It's Women's E-News did the article. Is that what you mean?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, this is Women's E-News. They write, it's incredible. It's worldwide. So this article went worldwide. And it went in last Thursday, so just this last Thursday. So if you type in We News or Women's E-News, it's courts must open eyes and ears to abuse children.
That's right.
And that's in there. And the article will help women that are going through this, give it to your attorneys, give it to therapists that you know are on your side. You need to educate. You need to educate too. Okay, go ahead, honey. I'm here.
Number 3, bring in multidisciplinary teams and forensic interviewers, as well as, I'd like to add to that, people who are trained to identify sexual abuse, which is what they're saying, to videotape the child's testimony or descriptions, which need to be age appropriate, of the abuse they are experiencing.
Oh, yeah. If you have that videotape, how can you go against that videotape, And actually you need those multidisciplinary teams to work on this and interviewers. Not so the child isn't interviewed by 15 different people. They're protected. The videotaping they don't know is going on. So, you get the truth. And you protect the child from many interviews and many, seeing many doctors. I mean, come on. I would never have taken my daughter if she was in pain and I couldn't ignore what was happening. I didn't know what was, obviously I needed to take her. But I would love to have had one place to take her.
Of course you would, and you tried so hard, and and this is what really got me in what you were saying before, it's like, don't tell the authorities, because these authorities, instead of being supportive, the danger, and this is what's so frightening, because they don't do point 4, which is recognise parents who are acting in good faith. Now, that's a really complicated point, recognise parents who are acting in good faith.
I know, but I think recognize parents that are in good faith. I mean, give them a chance. Don't just all of a sudden say you're a vindictive ex-wife, you're hysterical, you're crazy, you're out to get that man. If a woman's bringing this forward, and there's stats that will prove this, you can look it up, it is so rare that a woman would make false allegations in this. They don't do that to their children.
That's right. It's very rare. It's meant to be like 2%.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, I was going to say 2%, but I didn't want to say it unless I really had those facts. But yes, it is.
Yeah, and this is where parents get, and that's the complete contradiction to Gardner's sort of argument that so many, and what never ceases to amaze me is how unthinking people can be about these things, how we buy a cliche and we don't then investigate it just that little bit further.
I think that these pedophiles are sociopaths, and they're really good at mimicking certain behaviors, and they're really good at pulling the wool over people's eyes, and and judges. I mean, like if you had it in criminal court, I would want them to have training in that area too, because that's a lot of it. So yeah, you're right. Good faith, but I'm just saying the good faith is like if somebody brings this forward, give them, don't just judge them and think they're this or they're that or they're out to get the husband. Take a look at it because you're looking at the safety of the child. Who cares about that parent at that point? Look at the safety of that child.
Yeah, like if in the ocean and someone yells shark, you don't just go, oh no, there's not a shark. It's like people need to take it a little bit more personally. Like you realize that people don't normally yell out something. People aren't crying wolf. Point 5, completely discontinue parental alienation syndrome as similar arguments, and that is just proven in many states. In Australia where I live, the Queensland anyway, the Psychological Society has said it's a bunk science, it's just a load of rubbish. So completely discontinue parental alienation syndrome and similar arguments, and you just covered that in your last point really. 6, require the courts to consider past and or present domestic violence, the abuse of the protective parent itself. And before you comment, I did want to add that other comment about sociopaths. Of course they're sociopaths, even though it seems like it's a broad label, because a sociopath is somebody who lacks the ability to mentalize and recognize the other person's feelings and point of view. And if you're molesting a child, then you're failing to recognize what it feels like from the child's point of view.
Right, and then the other thing about that part of it, too, is, if you read about the sociopath and, their behavior, is they arrest that at a very young age, so they're really good at manipulating. And if, I used to think that the father could manipulate the whole system because he was so good, but I was fighting up against the system. So I also had him, but I also had the system. And he was able to manipulate people left and right through this thing.
Yeah, and the system... Yeah, and the system has become sociopathic in terms of what the label sociopath means, with that lack of empathy for the... Yeah.
They have total lack of empathy. It's amazing how much.
And at an enormous cost to your beautiful daughter and so many beautiful sons and daughters throughout the world, millions of them. And this is why we have to do something. So we need to build, point 7, build effective, as your list, build effective oversight and accountability for judges and training in this area. And this is what Carlos Rosansky says too. You have to train the judges, and this is what he's calling for. Build effective oversight and accountability for judges and training in this area.
Yeah, I would love to sit in front of a group of judges and speak about this and talk about this and educate them. That would be one of my main issues, to get to the judges. But
you want to continue on with the last 4, Jill?
I'll read fast. There's 3. Require continuing education taught by experts in child sexual abuse and domestic violence for all court professionals, because we're running out of time, Maralee. Professionals and judicial officers. You can comment on this. I'll hand it to Stephen when I've read them. Require continuing education taught by experts in child sexual abuse and domestic violence for all court professionals, like continuing education, and judicial officers. Include exams to certify passing these courses. Develop a system to more easily remove incompetent, poorly trained professionals, including judges and custody evaluators, so important. Require disclosure of conflicts of interest on the part of all involved in these legal processes at all levels. Require judges to receive training about sociopaths and how they can manipulate the legal processes and family courts. All brilliant stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And so important.
I think that, things that can help women out there that are going through this, that article is very important, I think, and once again, that's from Women E-News, and it is online, and you can look it up, and I mentioned that it is Courts Must Open Eyes and Ears to Abuse Children. My book is Prosecuted but Not Silenced, Courtroom Reform for Sexually Abused Children, and you can get that at my website, which is mmclean.author.com. Oh, I forgot what my website is. .tateauthor.com. So it's
you forgot what your own website is.
Yeah, I forgot my own website. It's Maralee. So it's M for Maralee Mclean, McLean.tateauthor.com. and that's where you can purchase the book. And what I did in this book, I just want to get this out there, is I told the emotional story, which was to draw normal readers in, people that don't know this stuff, but it also shows what the system's doing all the way through. Then I did the research behind it. So the research behind it has a lot of Joan Pennington and all the top professionals knowing what's going on in these cases and the myths and the backs to sexual abuse. And then I put the legal in behind it. Why I did that is because if you read certain parts of my book and you're, as somebody that's never touched this stuff before, you're going to go, that can't happen. They could not have done that. Then it says go to number A, agenda A or whatever in certain areas, and it'll have the actual court order, or it'll have the actual police report stating what's happening. And that's absolutely solidified and gives all the evidence to what's going on. So it's definitely a case study of what's going on, but it would definitely, for women that are dealing with attorneys that don't get this, they need to read the book first. And I suggest attorneys, judges, social workers, psychologists, all these people need to read that book. And that's what I wrote it for.
Yeah, and that book is Prosecuted but Not Silenced. Courtroom Reform, Why We Need Education in Our Family Courts for Sexually Abused Children. So we do thank you for coming on today, Maralee.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. And thanks for getting this stuff. And let's get it out there. And I don't know if people were going to call in or not, but I feel bad if they didn't get a call in and say something. Cause
I posted a number, but I didn't get any calls. So.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure.
I don't know.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes.
No, thank you. You were fantastic.
And this has been another Sunday Revolution Radio. Cancel the Cabal, everyone. I will see everyone next Sunday again. Another guest. So take care till then. And goodbye.